So Scott, welcome again. Delighted to have you involved here with Retail Risk Sydney. Thank you for joining us this morning.
Good morning, Paul. Good morning, everybody. And it's great to be speaking with you again.
Thank you. So Scott, you and I are just going to have a little chat about, I hate the term, but I'm going to use it anyway, the new normal. It's if it makes it into a dictionary, I shall be even more devastated and concerned, but I fear it may well do in the near future. Perhaps before we kick off, and I've got some questions, and the reason I wanted to talk to you this morning is I've got huge respect for you. I know you're on the vendor side slightly, but a really good view across retail. Perhaps you could just give me an overview of what you guys have been doing over the last 6 months. And particularly, I know you've seen an increase in business, and I'm really keen to understand where, what directions you've been pulled in and what you've been up to.
Sure. So over the last 6 months, and that new normal, sadly, I do agree is probably going to make it into the dictionary. There's definitely been some testing in new areas. So from our perspective, because of the national footprint we have, like in the retail space, at peak, we've had substantive increases from new personnel, but the personnel working in those retail environments as well are having to deal with things that traditionally and a level of between frustration, aggression, and even violence that is just, it's unparalleled. So that's happening across the board. So we're definitely seeing a mix of the increase, like obviously necessity for guarding and changing the evolution with that role, but the other parts as well. And I use the phrase sort of whale watching, where over this last, especially I'm going to say over the last 5 or 6 months, it's rushing from one side of the boat to the other. We need to get more, more guarding in and sort of remedy this. Hang on a sec. Has anybody thought about what's happening with our networks? Oh, hang on a sec. What are we doing with our the data and information about our trading sheets and a range of other things? So it's caused a lot of people to sort of stop and take stock at a range of things that they probably should have had in place earlier from a continuity point of view. So it's there's been some unique challenges. Specifically, probably dramatic increase in demand, especially in some of the regional and remote environments, and making sure you're getting people at relatively short notice briefed for the totality of the role that they're going to be facing, and with the current risk landscape as well. So there's definitely been some unique challenges we've had during this time, and there's been a big evolution with elements of the industry for sure.
Yeah, and you make an interesting point there about increased violence, and perhaps just pick up on that with you. We have heard stories about, a different type of violence, maybe aggression from customers that might not normally have been aggressive towards staff. Have you found, how's that played out? Is that when you're asking people to be, compliant with legislation around masks? Is it queuing frustration? And I guess it's all of those, but, from your position, very, very close to it, what's your take on it? And what have you seen your staff have been subjected to?
There's been on a couple of different approaches that there's been with this. Firstly, you've got the combination for employment concerns, stress, frustration, fear. So there's a heightened level of volatility with some of the interactions that a personnel are having to deal with. You've got the unique scarcity management parts when people are going on, and obviously the well-published concerns about toilet paper running out and things like that as well. So what's happened is, I suppose as a nation, we've gone through the happy giving and supporting each other stages and everything with the fires to get out of my way. I'm going to run over you for a packet of toilet paper and toilet wipes. So the person on the front line, including from the retail person as well. This isn't just from a security perspective. I know Dominic Lamb from the Retail Association has spoken regularly about this as well. But so there's been a lot of volatile situations where probably the stress and frustration has been, I know there's been communicated figures of close to 100%. I would actually say it's substantially more than that. I'd say that's just from a lack of reporting of some of these items. But the other part is as well is that, the flow on to aggression from physical altercations, people leaving and actually coming back with implements, weapons, a range of other things that have happened. So we've had to make sure that obviously we're providing a person with the right tools to help deal with that. It's making sure that situational awareness point of view, and as always, it's that customer service experience that needs to be provided, but that extra level alertness and vigilance, because you're not just dealing with some stressed, frustrated, like an angry people. You're also dealing with a subset of those people that have listened to Facebook videos, a range of other things, so are now walking around with a 1-page, 3-paragraph excerpt of 2 parts of the Biosecurity Act and want to talk like solicitors. So having to really make sure that the frontline personnel are educated on the fact that a lot of these places are private premises and conditions of entry and a range of other things. So there's been a lot of compressed activity that's had to occur over a short period of time.
Yeah, and I'm guessing, of course, once upon a time that that extra information would have been communicated in person, but has that had to flip on? So are you now having to train people online in that environment to then deploy them almost with no support, I guess, other than you've got this job at this particular outlet to go and do? I mean, yeah, how do you manage that with a vast network that you've got?
Yeah, that's a great question. So, I mean, from the security perspective, and each state has, sadly, like your different standards that they can place in it as well. But you've got to try and make sure that your processes are right, that all boats are rising together. So, we make sure we make very active use from the technology about if they're getting content out, and not just here's a PDF, read it, and let's click that you've done it. Recording videos, getting like your feedback, running class groups where you're able to actually put them through some scenario and situation work. We've got to think outside the box for how we best prepare people for we're doing this. I'm a massive fan, and this is more down the security vein of things, for reality acquisition and stress inoculation, because not just does it help people respond better to some of these potentially volatile situations, it helps best prepare them for the social and emotional after effects. And from both the retailers personnel as well as from the security personnel, as this rapid spike that's happened for with those now, there's been some early trying to catch up with that to make sure that our people are supported and like ready for for this change landscape that they're on.
Yeah, it is all of a sudden the arm around the shoulder having to be done virtually is a whole different challenge, isn't it? To actually be able to do as human beings, we're touchy feely creatures, aren't we? And that's been taken away from us in the large part. You used a term a moment ago, which I thought was a brilliant analogy, which was whale watching, running from one side of the boat to the other. And I know, as well as the physical side of retail and working with clients, you also look after the sort of the cyber and the data side. What are you seeing on that? I mean, I've heard stories of retailers sort of going for the business continuity manual and finding that the last update was 1987. It runs to 1 page. I mean, you're laughing there. I'm guessing you may have seen something similar. So talk to me about that. What have you found on that front?
Yeah, definitely. Well, so the whale watching, and I use this quite regularly because it's there'll be quite a bit of media will come out about one topic, and okay, let's throw all our support and efforts from that point of view. So we're working from home now. Okay, by the way, here's your computer. Here's a 2-page part, like if you're setting up, like for some security protocols and a range of other things. Now that we're coming back to work, let's rush back that way. But the other parts with this is that protection of information as well. And in the retail environment, trading figures, and so the financial information that's getting shared across, information that is occurring for incidents like at your front side as well, and intelligence, making sure that information and data can be shared effectively, not only for obviously tracking with the results and outputs, but for that tasking on intelligence. These are fundamental things that need to happen in a real environment. And sadly, because of the different operating and work approach now, some of the organizations that we speak with, and obviously I speak with a lot as well on LinkedIn and some open communications, the version of security is, let's send WhatsApp, or let's take a photo of what we're to send and send as an SMS, because I'm sure nobody can read off the messages. So there's some real concerns there, and I honestly think we're probably just at the start as far as seeing from where the flow on is going to be, like from these effects now. I think the amount of people that have gone home and they've used some extra time for jumping rapidly online for doing online training, or organizations trying to work out and just getting device functionality out before security then playing catch up. I think there's going to be some major concerns with that, and that's why there's a couple of good initiatives that have come out from that perspective, and it's where I'm spending a bit of time as well for my research as well, I've got to say.
And in terms of where this sits going forward, what's your perspective? Should organizations be investing time, money and effort to put in a huge amount of protocols for people working from home, or is your personal opinion that we're all going to end up back in the office in 6 months' time and forgetting this has gone on? How do you advise somebody on that? Where should they be going? What's your top tip, if you like, for how to address this?
Yeah, great question. Well, a couple of, I suppose, top tips with that. Definitely like ensuring, from a risk mitigation point of view and security point of view, the framework is protecting people, property, information, and reputation. And the people and property is pretty traditional, and we do that well. And the reputation, and this is, I'm saying with the partnerships with the retail environment and the providers and general support services, the protection of information, I truly think is undervalued. So part of it at the moment now is making sure firstly, you've got that right framework in place, making sure your staff are educated as well as to what secure looks like. So whether you're using, there's a new platform out that I've been testing using myself. I'm not affiliated with them, I'm saying up front, but that Mercury, platform by secure communication, end-to-end encryption, file drop sharing, communication, image sharing, audio, a range of others, but in that secure environment. Take that and compare that at the moment where, sadly, I'm aware of horror stories where there's been situations that have occurred where there's security personnel, both overt and covert, and information about to provide updates has been taken by a personal mobile phone image and then getting shared. What's going to happen with that image when that's across now and unlike on personal phones? So you've got that part, the financial part. There's a whole range of parts that I think are really important to nail down. But from the continuity point of view, my biggest tip will be brush the cobwebs off it. If you've got some form of business continuity plans in place, pull them out and review them and have a look. I can guarantee the majority of them have not got anything about pandemic in there, have not got the sudden work from home and a lot of the IT environments up there. Sadly, some organizations and some individuals I've spoken to, their entire version of business continuity is, I've got my invoicing database backed up to a USB stick. Like, which USB stick? Oh, here it is. Here it is in my pocket here. That's their organizational continuity. So yeah, that would be the biggest part at the moment. Really use this opportunity as a catalyst to take a fresh look at your business and what challenge you face now and what corrective actions, what learnings have we got over the last 6 months? Because people are still evolving and changing now. And I don't think a large portion of organizations, and I'm saying across multiple sectors, have taken some stop and reflection time now and say, what have we actually learned over the last your 5 or 6 months? What can we put in place now to make sure this isn't going to happen again? We haven't got those unique challenges. So I think that's probably the most important things for a focal point.
Yeah, you make some really good points there. And I'm just reminded when you're talking about something like the encrypted solution, about 2 or 3 weeks ago, I was emailed a very sensitive trading document by a large retail organization. It was somebody in their finance team that was working at home, and they thought they were sending it to a colleague, and the subject line was, could you please back this up? And they were clearly working from home. And then I got a panicked phone call, and their remedy was to get somebody from their legal team to ring me up and talk to me on the phone and say, could you please delete it? Now, could you go into your deleted items file and delete it again? Yeah. That was the best that they could come up with. So I'd been emailed an extremely sensitive document that they wouldn't want in the public domain. I could only assume he wanted to send it to another Paul, not me. And then escalation. So at least they'd admitted to somebody the mistake. Somebody from legal got in touch to say, could you please confirm you are deleting it? Delete it again, and then please send me an email to confirm you've deleted it, which I was happy to do because we've worked with the organization. But you sort of sit there thinking, and to your point, if that information is switching from email and going across a who knows, a WhatsApp channel, if that's the best they've got for encryption from home,
some of these apps are for free for a reason. Because depending on what's happened with data scraps and a range of other things. But the thing is, different levels with that, and that's the other part. I don't think a lot of organizations have really stopped and thought about that. There's one part about your financial and trading figures and others as well. But if you're having situations where, as part of it, you're collating information on behaviors, on what's occurred with different situations, whether they be apprehensions or a range of other parts, and photographic evidence, these sort of things getting shared, like in different pots on WhatsApp groups and a range of other things, is not secure. And there's a potential chance of this information and images, then leaking out and getting onto social media. And look at the ramifications there. But I think the biggest part, the overarching part, is stop and have a look at what we've really learned over the last 5 or 6 months. I think that the entire combined, I'm going to say industry, so security and retail as well, the unparalleled spike in aggression and that frustration for things as well. I don't think anybody was really prepared for that effectively, because then you've got the effective ramp up for those numbers over that short time. So some of these things just weren't on the radar, and I think a lot of good can come out of it, because I think if we have a look at from those from the learning from what's occurred now, there should be a bit of a tighter bond where the next step should be security providers or consultants working with the retail environment, actually saying, let's do some training together here. We need to understand what our roles play, what some of these early signs and triggers, and how we're going to change that conduct, that behavior if it's heading down a certain way. So I think it's caused a good spark of awareness, and I think we need to make the most of these opportunities that are afforded to us to have a fresh look in that retail environment about what we're doing to mitigate those risks and ensure that continuity of service, because this whale watching for 5 or 6 months just isn't effective.
Yeah, no, perfect. Some really good advice. I think that's if people sat down and did that, they'd probably have a far better experience. Right. One last question for you.
Yes.
There's no right or wrong answer to this, I guess, but from your perspective, you're looking ahead to 2021. We're all happy to write off 2020. What do you think it looks like in terms of the split between homework in office? What kind of normal are we going to get back to, and what, if any, planning can you put in place to best support your clients and you're recommending retailers do for the next year?
I think my view on this, and speaking to a variety of stakeholders across multiple sectors, we're involved in education, retail, corporate, and a range of different parts in that as well. I would say realistically, my view on it would be probably, I'm going to say, a 40% return to work, which I know is probably lower than other people's, but I think based on trying to really dig in and see what organizations have done now to help with their enhancing communications, their performance management, maintaining the trust factor and balance with their personnel, that information flow, and some of the learning that's happened over the last 5 or 6 months, some very early tragic mistakes, but then some obviously like your real look and revisit. That's where I think that things will go there. I think that over the next 3 to 4 months, I think we're going to see some terrible results from a cybercrime perspective. I think just flow-on effects from vulnerabilities that have occurred over the last 4 or 5 months. So that will be the next big spike and focal point, which is why you're trying to spend a lot of time and energy focusing on the next steps commensurate with that. I think the other part is going to be 2021. There'll be a bigger defined focus on trying to find that balance point where, because of what's occurred over the last 4 or 5 months, how do we provide the retail environment and the related security personnel, but everybody there, some additional training that's going to give them enhanced situational awareness for identifying if conversations are heading down a bad path, underpinned by that extension of the service delivery part. So I think there's going to be a big focus from the training point of view. That's what I think probably like the key focal point you'll be moving forward.
Yeah, I think you're absolutely spot on. We've got people out at home and in the field with a level of support that's not there physically that they might normally have had. So training is the key, because there's certainly gaps, isn't there, in what people know and the resources that they've got to hand, for sure.
Yeah. So, and some of the retailers, I've got to say, are doing it quite well. I mean, we've actually been involved and delivered some training sessions where, as part of it, we've taken a run through the whole lot. What are we doing about the environment, for maintaining good visible sight lines and reducing theft? What are we doing about getting our people best prepared? So if people were using this verbiage and stance, that you don't respond defensively and managing that as well. So there's been some quite good responses, but sadly it's just not consistent for the industry. And I think it's really timely for us to do that.
Yeah, fantastic. Scott, it's always an absolute pleasure. Thank you very much for sharing your expertise and insight, and really appreciate you taking the time to join us this morning.
Thanks very much, Paul. Have a great rest of the morning, everybody.